Welcome to Dedicated. I'm your host, Doug Brunt. Today we're with Maureen Callahan. Her motto is no sacred cows, and she means it. Hypocrites beware. She is a New York Times best-selling author and a columnist for the Daily Mail, where her Wikipedia page says she is known for her vitriolic opinion pieces.
I haven't seen that in a while.
By the way, they misspelled vitriolic on the Wikipedia page. Someone needs to go in there.
I love whoever did that.
Yeah. And over the years, she's written for New York Magazine, New York Times Magazine, Vanity Fair, and the New York Post. She is the author of 4 books. The latest is Ask Not. This is a terrific and best-selling book, Ask Not, The Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed. Maureen, I have been looking forward to this. Welcome.
Thank you, Doug. I can't tell you how honored I am. You have collected a real murderer's row of authors on your podcast. So to be asked to be here is, I am so flattered and really excited.
You are one of my favorite authors and writers generally. I always go right to your columns, and your books have been amazing. We'll talk about all 4 of them, but especially the Kennedy book.
Thank you.
Which, by the way, has so much in there that I thought I kind of knew the Kennedy story and some of the Jackie story. There's so much in there that had my jaw on the floor. I just couldn't believe it. But we'll save that.
Great.
The cocktail. First things first. We're going vodka martini olives.
Yes, please. Thank you. I know. Now, I understand from listening to your podcast, you are a martini purist, right? You are a gin only. So I appreciate you deviating from the purist perspective. What do you think of us vodka martini drinkers?
I'm a fan of the vodka martini. In fact, years ago, I probably had more of the vodka martinis than the gin martinis. But I do feel that if you say martini without specifying the liquor, that would mean gin.
Agreed. I always specify.
So you say when you order, you say vodka.
I order by the vodka,
understanding that
it would normally be understood to be gin.
Yeah. But I started getting much more into gin in the last few years.
What changed?
My taste buds somehow. I don't know. I think I just kind of came around on it. I used to associate gin with bad hangovers and bad angry buzzes, and now I don't feel that way anymore for whatever reason. I don't know.
I don't know if it's the same for you or for most people, but I feel like so much of alcohol, whether it's a beer, a spirit, what have you, is an acquired taste. Mm-hmm. Like the first time you ever tried a beer, you're like, this is disgusting.
I think I was 12. My dad gave me a sip out of a Miller High Life can, and it was disgusting to me.
Yeah, same.
Which was a good plan. It put me off it for 7 or 8 years, I think. Maybe not that long.
Yeah. I think the first time I got drunk, I was at maybe I was 13, 14. I was at a party. No, I was younger than that. I was probably 12. I was at a party, and unbeknownst to me, the girls had spiked the punch.
Oh.
So I had no understanding of what was happening to me. And it wasn't until the following morning, my mom was really gentle about it. I think she understood. I was the unwitting victim of a hangover. It was
That something similar happened to me. I think I was 13 or 14, and it was not unwitting, but I was hanging around with a slightly older crowd at the beach, and they made grain lemonade, and I just drank it as though it was lemonade on a hot day. And I was so drunk. I blacked out. I barfed all over. Thank God some older kid who was nice followed me home to make sure I made it to the front doorstep, at which point he ejected. My parents took it from there. Yeah. And I had fallen, so my knees were scabbed and stuck to the sheets in the morning, and I continued to vomit overnight. My mom was beside herself.
Aww.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we've become functional drinkers, so cheers to that.
Cheers. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Ooh, that is a good, nice, chilly, well-mixed martini.
Oh, thank you. I put a little olive juice in there. I hope a little dirty is okay.
Perfect.
All right, let's start. So you were raised Long Island, right?
Correct.
Okay, Wikipedia page had that correct.
Yes, Long Beach, Long Island.
So that sort of New York edge is in your blood. Would you come into the city when you were young and socialize through high school?
A lot. I was. My parents put me through the Catholic school system from grade 1 to grade 12. Long Beach is about 45 minutes outside of the city. So, as soon as I was able, I was on that train every weekend, going to the city, going to all the thrift stores. And I know you're Pennsylvania, you're Philly,
that's
right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is familiar to you, but I would go to the Village to like the Poster Mat, you know, all the places where you would buy like the new wave music, the new wave clothes, like all of that. And then on Monday it was back to school in my little uniform.
How about in the evenings? Would you sneak into clubs and things like that?
Yeah, but not really, because my dad was really all for that kind of thing. So he would help me like fake my IDs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it was easy to get into the club.
Yeah, but he knew I was a good kid. He knew I wasn't in the bathroom doing cocaine. Like I just wanted to go see the bands. Yeah.
So always into music. So I know your first job was MTV, right?
Yeah, that was one of my absolute first jobs. I was interning there in college, and they asked me if I would come work for them. I was about a year away from graduating. I said, well, I'm still in school. They said, do this. Go to class when you have to go to class, and then come to work when you can come to work.
What were you doing for them?
I was a production assistant.
So you were on the sets of making
I was on
videos?
the sets. This was also not the videos per se, but shooting what they called the day parts, which was the VJs doing their things. Or it was the infancy of Total Request Live. We had this really small studio over on 10th Avenue. So it was really tiny, and everybody really worked together. It was before MTV became this sort of real behemoth.
Yeah.
And they paid me $50 a day.
Oh my God.
And I felt like the luckiest kid in the world.
That must have been a dream job. So the VJs, Nita Blackwood, that kind of.
I was post them, so it was around the era of grunge. So we had Kennedy, who is now at the Daily Mail, was one of the ones who came on. Karen Duffy, who was known as Duff, was one of the big ones. There was Steve Isaacs, who was like the grunge guy.
Steve Isaacs, yeah.
And then they did like an in-house VJ search, and I wound up applying for that, like auditioning for that, and I almost got it.
So MTV was during college, internship and work, but then you went and got a degree in visual arts in New York?
Journalism, actually, at the School of Visual Arts.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
I wound up there because they offered me a scholarship, like a full one. And I knew I wanted to get out of school with zero debt because I was going to go work in an infamously low-paying industry. So I wanted to be able to take whatever job in whatever newsroom or studio.
Journalism. You knew
exactly.
I
knew I was going into media.
Okay.
But I wanted to go where my sort of inner director was taking me, not where like my debt load was taking me.
So then you'd get out of the School of Visual Arts and you have a job. So at this point, are you done with MTV and you've moved on? Because I think the Post started in like 2002.
Yeah, the Post started in 2002. So I was at MTV. They offered me a full-time job after. I was doing a dual internship at Sassy Magazine. So I was doing print and broadcast. So both of them offered me a job when I got out of college. And I went with Sassy. And that lasted for about a year before it was sold. And then I was lucky enough to go on to New York Magazine. Then I went on to Spin. So I had a really good grounding in all of these different sorts of
were these all investigative pieces? We were doing commentary on music.
I was doing music stuff. I was doing my first real feature was I went and interviewed a girl who had lost her home in a major flood. I think it was in Mississippi, and it was sort of about the poorer areas of the country that always get hit the hardest. And that that was the first piece I did where I was like, oh, I kind of have my arms around this. Like I can do this.
Is this where you honed it really? Because I've talked to a number of people who went to graduate school for journalism and other things, and they're like, really, there's no substitute for getting in there and doing the job.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really attracted me to the School of Visual Arts, the journalism program was run by this amazing journalist named Paul Good. He'd been one of the foremost reporters during the civil rights movement. And the whole ethos there was New York City is your classroom. So when I would go to them and say, I have this opportunity to work over here, over there, they would say, go do it. It was really the kind of education it was why I wanted to go to school in New York City. I know people who went to Northwestern or to any given Ivy, and sometimes I'll feel this little pang of jealousy, but I don't think that would have been for me.
Yeah, I totally believe that. Almost any career, if you're here, this is where you're making your connections. There is no better learning ground. That's a great way to phrase it. New York City is your classroom.
Yeah.
So I would talk briefly about your process on this, because you and I were joking about this the other day. It must be so hard and stressful to have a regular column, especially when your reputation is to be clever and funny. Like, to be clever and funny on a schedule has got to be hard. So how do you pick your topics? How do you structure your day to meet your, I guess, weekly or sometimes more often column?
It's usually bi-weekly. I have great editors, Matt London and Henry Jones, primarily at the Mail. We always sort of talk in the mornings about what's going on, what we should be columning on, how we put a fresh spin on it. I usually have some mild, low-grade panic attacks at any given point. I routinely think I can't do this, routinely. And then if I can come up with a lead, like a pithy little like hook, then I know I'm like on my way.
So that comes by Tuesday and you're writing by Wednesday?
Oh, normally it's first thing Monday morning. Okay. They love to call me at like 8 a.m. Monday morning, first thing. Like,
and by noon, you need to have your hook and get rolling?
Or if not, file.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever picked something where your editor is thinking, like, your reputation is you'll go after things, has there ever been one where your editors thought, that's a bit of a hot rock, Maureen? Maybe, are you sure you want to do that one?
Sure. And, I think what makes a really great columnist, opinion writer is always having your mind open to the idea that you might be wrong, that your editor is really there to protect you in a lot of ways. And I often read columns, usually in the New York Times, where I think, where's the editor? Why didn't somebody grab that writer by the scruff of their neck? I mean, I know this is sort of a ridiculous argument because there's too much groupthink at a place like that. But I really, when somebody says to me, you might want to rethink this, I really take it seriously. Doesn't mean I agree necessarily after I've thought it through. But I really, really rely on that.
Have you ever been sued for a piece?
Yes, once. It was while I was at the New York Post. I don't even know if I can still talk about it because this was years ago, and I don't even think it's resolved.
Okay, so you can't.
I don't even think I can. Yeah, I'll tell you off the air. Okay. I wish I could talk about it.
It was a person or a thing or?
Both.
Okay. All right. We'll discuss later. And how about just otherwise Blowback? Not legal, but,
I love Blowback.
Yeah.
I love it.
Just more attention to your piece, I guess.
It tells me I have struck a nerve. Now, I don't write stuff to be outrageous or to be contrarian for the sake of that. But
when I read your pieces, it feels soothing to me. It's scratching a terrible itch when I read it because I'm watching something out in the world or whatever. You must be watching something similar and you find the hook and then you write about it and you write all the things I've been trying to just get out. It's so frustrating to see some of the things going on and you just completely come in there and lay it all out and then eviscerate it if it requires that.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, I think. I get myself in trouble in my normal life. I've gotten a lot better at it, but I sometimes just will just say the truth of what I think without realizing how it might sound to somebody else, like never meaning to hurt anyone's feelings. Yeah. And to do that in a column form, again, where I have these like guardrails that are my very well-intentioned editors is it's a great outlet, really.
Can you think of an example of Blowback?
Let's see. Okay, so I wrote one of the multiple columns, obviously, on one of my favorite topics. I think we'll probably circle back to her, Meghan Markle.
Yes.
And I wrote this like 2,000-word column. I was back at the Post at the time. We made it the front page. The Wood, which is the headline, was called Toddlers and Tiaras. And it was all about her, bitching and moaning about how hard it was to be a royal in exile. And there were all these wild, wild claims she was making. And I got equal parts, thank you for saying this, and you are a racist. And I actually had an agent who complained to me that she got one email, saying, how could you represent this reprehensible person? And she said, I think maybe I should disassociate myself from you for a
One
minute.
email was enough to penetrate her thin skin. Wow.
Yeah. And I said, well, you're fired.
That was smart.
Yeah.
You need somebody stronger in your corner.
Yeah. Somebody with a little bit of a backbone.
Yeah.
But when you hit those nerves, like you're talking about something that is on people's minds that they're feeling very strongly about one way or the other. And that's always fun.
I wonder if you can sort of watch your email inbox and know, like, use that as sort of a meter for how much of a nerve you've struck with each piece, just to see the inflow of feedback.
It's usually down to comment section. Most people get it out there. And I try not to look too often because I think it's a very unhealthy place to be. Yeah. And I never really want that to dictate what I'll do next, you know?
God, good for you, because when I have a book review, I don't, maybe you do it differently with your books, but I do read the Amazon comments of my books, which I probably shouldn't do. Normally they're good, but every once in a while you get someone in there,
It's a hard thing to resist. I do my best. I will say my first review in the New York Times was for Ask Not. Mm-hmm. And it was a barn burner. This guy took me out back, shot me, dragged my corpse to the driveway, ran me over back and forth for good measure. Half the review was about what a terrible person I am. Never met this individual. Mm. And the other half was how horrible this book was. And that was like a real whammy, because I was like, wow, finally the New York Times deigned to review me. I'm sure they regard me as, a tabloid writer, redheaded stepchild. And then, so I was reviewed and they ran it twice, but it was really vitriolic. So my plan is to frame it and hang it in the bathroom.
When it's that much of an attacking review, it's about something else. It's not about the book. If they didn't like the book, they say, well, kind of missed the mark. If they go after you with energy like that, there's more going on there.
I think you're right. I think you kind of have to take it ultimately as a point of pride, because the New York Times Book Review, which has been in dire straits for many, many years. I don't know if you read it on Sundays. I punish myself and read it on Sundays.
I do, yeah.
9 times out of 10, their reviews are synopses of the book. I defy you to find an actual opinion as to whether you should buy it or not, or read it or not. And I don't understand how it exists as this toothless entity.
Yeah, sometimes there'll be a little paragraph at the end that has something on top of the synopsis. But yeah, I know what you mean. 90% of the review is just like off the book jacket for the most part.
Just give it to AI.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. How about when you've written a piece, have you ever, sort of aside from the Blowback thing, have you ever walked into a restaurant and seen the person who was the subject of the piece, or encountered them at a New York gala affair?
This is good. That normally no, but a few weeks ago I was up at News Nation visiting a friend of mine, and it was like my conscious mind buried it until he walked past me, but Chris Cuomo walked right past me. Mm-hmm. I took Chris Cuomo to task many a time during COVID for running around East Hampton without a mask, pretending to be in his basement, and then took him to task again for attempting to smear his brother's accusers, these women, multiple women who said Andrew Cuomo had been sexually inappropriate with them. He walked right by me, and I did a double take, and I realized it was him. And I thought, well, what would have happened if he would have stopped and said, hey? And I think I would have said, hey.
Did you read my piece?
What's going on? How are you? We can, Yeah.
Well, you should do that next time. You should say, look, I'm happy to do an interview with you sometime.
I would never shy away from it. Yeah, I would love to.
Any big differences? You were at the New York Post for many years, and more recently at the Daily Mail. Mm-hmm. Is there any difference in the culture, atmosphere of those two places?
I don't know if it's just because the Mail seems newer to me now. But the Mail also really is, it's doing this very interesting thing. They're throwing a lot of their money into the U.S. operation. Mm-hmm. They see the United States as the future. And they are the most read English language news outlet in the world.
Wow.
So there's a real, there's a sense of, it's like this new frontier in media. And so many of those are no longer in existence. So it feels like a very exciting place to be.
They seem to be adapting to new media pretty well.
They do.
And Daily Mail TV, they're still doing some things there. I remember some people doing Daily Mail TV shows. Is that still going on?
I think so, but I don't know I'm not really in the office all that much.
Yeah.
So I'm not really privy to sort of the inner workings of how they're thinking they're going to continue to grow the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like the Post too. New York Post. And Daily
Always
Mail.
love the New York Post.
We get the Post paper deliver every morning, and I'm on that. Something leads me to their online property pretty much every day, as does the Daily Mail too.
Yeah, I enjoy a physical paper.
All right, so let's talk about the books for a moment. So you started the New York Post in 2002. 2010 is your first book on Lady Gaga. How do you decide whether it's going to be a column, a book, and how did the whole book thing get started?
So the Gaga book was an outgrowth of a column that I wrote for the Post. She had just become really famous, and they wanted to figure out a way to do it. And my thought was, well, what's her real story? And of course, her real story was she was like a very well-off Catholic educated kid from the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I got a call about a week after that thing ran, and it was from an agent named David Kuhn, I knew who he was. And he left a voicemail, and he said, I could get you a book deal. So I called him back. It wasn't like my dream was to write a biography of Lady Gaga, but he was like, write me a page. I can sell this thing. He did. He got me a nice amount of money, which allowed me to buy my first apartment in New York. So I always say, like, I kind of did that one for the money, but I also did it in a way to kind of burst the fear of what it was to write a book. I had a fear of it for a very long time. It wasn't rational. I don't know what it was about. I don't know if you felt similarly when you set about writing your first book, but it really felt daunting.
It does feel like a big mountain to climb.
Yeah.
For sure, until you've done it once or twice, and then I know how to do this. You
can rip the Band-Aid off. Yeah.
So then the next book was 2014, Champagne Supernovas, which was Kate Moss, sort of the modeling industry a little bit.
Yeah,
what
it
got
was
you
a
into that one?
triple biography. Kate Moss, Marc Jacobs, Alexander McQueen. I wanted to write something about my generation. I wanted to write something about the 90s and the definitive cultural revolution of the 90s. And I really believed it was fashion. And I took these three people who were outliers of the establishment who came in and not only upended it, but then themselves became the establishment, which is always sort of how it goes. And I felt a real personal connection to that because it really was it transcended fashion. It was music, it was film, it was pop culture, it was grunge, it was train spotting, it was Britpop, it was everything. And that was a really fun one to do. And then,
how'd you sell that one? Did you put together, you had this idea and then you made the proposal and then you pitched it?
Yes. And we went out with it to one editor.
It was your idea or someone came to you?
It was my idea. Okay. It was my idea. We sold it. We went to one editor and she bought it immediately. Did that. And then they said, we're very happy with what you did here. We would like you to do another book on fashion. And I said, I really don't want to do that. I already had American Predator in my back pocket. I knew that was going to be the next book. And they told my agent, well, she's never really done anything like that before, so we can't go all in on that. And I was like, great. Okay. Now I have this real fire under my ass to do what you're telling me I can't do. And so we went out with that, and it was a hard sell. We went out and only one editor made an offer. And it was not a very big offer at all. I mean, I was having conversations with myself, like, if they offer me $10,000 and I lose a lot of money, will I take that? And I was like, yes. I just knew that was the book I wanted to do next. Yeah.
So this is American Predator.
Yeah.
So one, I guess one's all you need in the end, even though maybe two helps you get a better number, but one gets it done.
You only need one guy at the bar to like you. That's it. Yeah.
And here you did a bunch of, it was different in that you were going in through classified FBI files
Yes.
and doing lots of different kinds of research for this one.
Yes.
When you're doing these, by the way, are you on hiatus from your column?
No.
You're still doing both?
I do both. When I get close to the end, to crunch time, I usually take some sort of a book leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not very long, usually about a month or two. I kind of think that doing the column keeps me really sharp. Mm-hmm. You know,
a little structure in your week. A
lot of structure, a lot of the idea that writing is a discipline, not like a mystical art. You're not waiting for the muse. You have a deadline. You got to meet it.
Yeah, yeah. So what made you want to write the American Predator book so badly?
I had read this news story that blew my mind, and I read it and I thought, this is a book. And I know I have a good idea when I immediately become obsessed with the idea that somebody else is going to have the same exact thought and beat me to it. Mm-hmm. And that was this. It was a serial killer that the FBI had the likes of which they had never seen before. They were very open about it. The MO was mind-blowing, terrifying, and they were asking the public for help because his victims were all over the United States, if not beyond. And so I went to them. It's funny, I never had experience with this before. I went on the FBI's website, and it's sort of an invitation to people like us. It's like, the FBI, oh, you've seen us in movies. You've seen us on TV. Wouldn't you like to be? And I was like, oh, everything is a recruiting tool for them. Mm-hmm. So like a book is a recruiting tool for them. And so that was how I sort of began that particular book.
And then you made contact with the FBI, you were traveling around and sort of co-investigating things to some extent?
Yeah, and then what happened is the book at some point became an investigation of the investigation. There were multiple challenges with it, and I'll keep them very brief, but one was I was talking to extremely smart FBI agents. So I had to be just smart enough when I was talking to them. I couldn't be as smart or too smart. And I had to work them the way they work anybody else. Like I had to get them to get comfortable enough with me to slip up, which they eventually did. Then I learned in that sort after that those little slip ups, they stopped talking to me. Mm-hmm. But they had let me know that there were tons of documents that were being hidden that had never been logged anywhere. So then I had to sue the federal government, which took a year, maybe two. Took $30,000 of my own money, and I finally got these documents, which were sort of at the 11th hour, like the book was due, and suddenly like so much more became clear, and I was able to put together and write about very, very, very like 98% of chance of victims, some of whom are very famous cold cases in America, that this guy is likely responsible for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So then, 11th hour, as you say, were you then up all night long trying to redraft and get things into your editor on time?
That's when I took time off of work, and I was just in it like for, typically I'll work 4 hours a day, but this was sort of like, 8 hours a day. But honestly, Doug, it did not feel like work. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got these pages and I couldn't wait to get through them. Yeah. I couldn't wait to see what was in them, what they had been redacting, what they had been hiding, were my suspicions about X right or Y right. I mean, I think this is one of the most famous cases in not famous, sorry. It's really not as famous as it should be. I think it's one of the most fascinating, instructive, and still mysterious cases in modern American criminal history. Yeah. So
I have not read that one of yours yet. American Predator. Mm-hmm. Israel Keys is the name of the serial killer. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to check that one out too. All right, well let's move into Ask Not though, which is your most recent book. And we were together at the East Hampton Authors Night, which was fun. Out
it was
there
great
with your book. Beautiful weather and good event.
It's a great event.
So. You talk about the Kennedy inheritance in here. Do you have thoughts after having done all the work on this, the Kennedy inheritance being this sort of strain of terrible character that many of these Kennedys have, just pervasive through generations and brothers and cousins? And do you have thoughts on nature versus nurture on that particular strain?
It's interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot, nature versus nurture, in terms of what I might do next. And I really, with this book, with Ask Not, it's really about the women in the Kennedy family, or who were involved with Kennedy men. Very famous ones, from Jackie Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe to ones that you may not know. But throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, abused, sexually assaulted, left for dead, you name it. What was it in the water supply at the Kennedy compound, And I sort of, in the beginning of the book, I sort of lay the blame at the feet of the patriarch, Joe Sr., and I write about what I believe were his two original biblical sins. The first was political, his admiration of Adolf Hitler as United States ambassador to the United Kingdom, his bloodless acceptance of the looming death, as he was sure, of Western democracy, and the personal, which was his unilateral decision to forcibly lobotomize his 23-year-old daughter, Rosemary.
That is incredible. I
know.
That is so sad.
It was a fate worse
lived
than
on
death.
as just this, broken person. I mean, I can't believe that the detail of that, it was so sad.
Yeah.
And then, other women were broken in different ways. There were stories about, Jackie went through so much. The story of the dead, the corpse of JFK, and she kisses his dead penis. Sorry for the graphic nature of that, but I did not know that. That was a crazy bit of information here. Ted Kennedy, you touch on his sort of baby ego. There's so many different snippets in here, and then the getting back to the inheritance too. I had wondered about this with JFK Jr., his flight, but you talk about that being almost like a murder-suicide in the way that his behavior was so demented and risk-taking, and there were many examples of him taking risks prior to that flight.
And not just JFK Jr. taking these risks that were truly life-threatening. He was flirting with death constantly, but he had this habit, isn't quite the right word, but what he would do with the girlfriends and the women he dated was bully them into going along with him. Like, hey, I don't know anything about kayaking. Let's go out into the open sea. Let's see what's what. This girlfriend of his who nearly died several times with him, being bullied by, the underlying threat was, well, I'm JFK Jr. and I can have any woman I want. I chose you. So you want to do this or not? Because this is the cost. Yeah. And you take that mindset, and that's what gets the Bissett girls, young women, on this plane, on a plane he had no business piloting for multiple reasons. And the detail I really pull out in the book, which I still cannot believe is unreported to this day. He almost crashed into a packed American Airlines commercial jetliner that night, making its descent to New York City. He had no idea what he was doing. But after that, it was reframed in the media with the help of the Kennedy machine as Carolyn's fault because she was getting a pedicure.
It really is nuts that there's so much in here that I guess has been, the reason I don't know it is it's been the Kennedy machine covering it up. And you've got so much in here that's just really mind-blowing stuff. Some of it as well, going all the way back to, JFK and RFK and, back rooms where some young girl comes in and she's, maybe not physically forced, but in the same way that JFK Jr. got people on planes, she's filleting men and then has to turn around and he says something like, why don't you go fillet that one over there, where they're all in the room together. And these poor young girls are like, some of them having their first sexual experiences ever. Just totally crazy. And at the pinnacle of our political system too. And I want to get your thoughts, because you write about cultural present day and culture back then too. I wanted to say, well, you can't get away with this today, But then there's P. Diddy, he was doing all this stuff like not that long ago. And he meant, in this era when we all have a camera and video camera in our pockets, you'd think, well, no, this could never happen now. Someone would just tweet about it or something. We'd all know. But P. Diddy was doing this for decades and,
only arrested, a month ago? if we think about it. I mean, the news cycle is so whiplash crazy, but it really does. And, I think a lot of other people are going to fall in this. I think there are a lot of other famous people that are going to go down and that are very worried right now. But what this all goes to show you is sort of the institutional apparatus that protects and defends this kind of thing. And when you're talking about a president, at least today, there's a different kind of language and a different kind of understanding of what constitutes abuse of power. But you think about, one of the young girls in this book, a 19-year-old named Mimi Alford, she's still alive and to this day isn't quite sure what that was. Part of her really believes it as a true love story. Without the halo of a United States president putting that kind of attention on you, I think it's a different experience maybe that one metabolizes.
How do you think, in terms of the infrastructure protecting some of these people like P. Diddy, what is the infrastructure protecting him? Just high-powered lawyers? I mean, so many people knew he's having these wide-open parties in the Hamptons. I guess people were signing NDAs coming into these parties, it sounds like. But they were kids. I mean, these NDAs can come and go. There must be dozens, if not hundreds of teenagers who came in there, had some terrible experience, and whether they went to the cops or not, they must have told 100 people. I mean, so many people must know about this. I can't believe this is just now leaking into the papers. I
know. I mean, what's not to be underestimated with someone like Sean Combs, Diddy, is that he, as we know from the Cassie lawsuit, which broke this open last November, he routinely threatened to kill people. Whether you were a victim or a witness, or he would threaten to kill your family members. He blew up the car of a rival rapper. I mean, the guy was lethal. He's suspected in the death of Tupac.
So that could potentially intimidate media. Reporters who might report on this would otherwise say, I'd rather not get blown up next time I start my car. But I mean, that's where reporters like you come in, which, you report on this stuff without fear.
Well, I call him on it for sure. I don't know if it's the Irish in me or not, but I always think I'm not important enough to blow up. Who's going to come after me? Somebody like that is way bigger target. So, but I'm very, very interested to watch this trial play out. I'm fascinated by it.
Do we have dates on that? When does that start?
May 5th.
Okay.
Which is the same date as the Met Gala, to which he was routinely invited.
Yes, he was the ambassador some years, right? May 5th. So what does he do between now and May 5th? Is he in jail waiting? So he can't go out on bail. He's just going to serve time. He
tried to get bail 3 different times, denied each time.
Yep.
I believe not really because he was so much of a flight risk as he was such a danger.
He'll intimidate any witness, right? And you think the number of names is going to grow? You always hear all these other big stars, either his contemporaries or young ones, these sort of groomed up. A lot of names mentioned with this, like some of the biggest.
I think a lot. This is why I'm convinced, because there has been crickets from the hip hop community. Crickets from someone like Jennifer Lopez, who dated him during this time.
Yeah.
It's a very chic thing right now in Hollywood, the music industry, to stand up against any kind of sexual abuse. You take up that mantle and you run with it and you valorize yourself, and nobody's willing to do it. Why?
Do you think can you get a press pass, get front row seat to the trial? That could be a book.
I don't know. I probably could. You could
land a book deal right now on that. My God.
I don't know. It's so dark, Doug. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to be ready to get into that sort of world for headspace for a while. And the child abuse, the stuff about children 9, 10. I mean, yeah.
And then they're just thousands of bottles of baby oil, or I don't know what.
Which apparently were laced with a drug.
No way. A topical drug?
That's what the baby oil was about. The baby oil was laced with a drug that really knocked out the victim pretty quickly.
Just topically? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I did not know that part.
We just learned it, so don't feel bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. May 5th. We'll be tuning into that. So it sounds like, before we get into lightning round, it sounds like you have an idea for the next book. Mm-hmm. It has some connections to Ask Not, I suppose. Are you talking about Kennedy women, or it's broader than that?
It's actually, so I'm not, I believe I'm going to write it. I'm not sure if it's my next book or, maybe a little bit down the road, but it's true crime adjacent. It actually would fit into true crime. And it is very much sort of in this realm, sort of Irish Catholic families and secrets. So my dad passed away earlier this year, and at his wake, I was talking to my cousin who, out of nowhere, told me this deep, dark secret about my father and a crime that he had been involved in, that he took to his grave, that involved his best friend, my cousin's father. Doug, my cousin told me this piece of information. I turned to look at my father in his casket, and I silently said, "Thank you." Before he died, he said to me, "Oh, I have this trove of letters and recordings. A lot of it was from his time in Vietnam when he served in the war." And he said, "I think I'm going to give it to so-and-so." And I said, "I really would rather that you not. I would really rather you give it to me." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I think I'm going to write about you someday." And he said, "Okay." Now, for any writer, I can't even stress what a gift this is. You know that old saw, like, woe betide you if you have a writer in the family, because everything's material. He never said, if you find X, Y, or Z, please leave it alone. He never said that. He just said, okay.
Do what you're going to do. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a crime from, do you know the decade? Can you share which decade the crime happened?
It's the 60s. It's the 60s, and it's now a cold case. It's been a cold case since then.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
This sounds... have you worked up a proposal
I'm
to
glad
shop
to
around?
hear your reaction, because I was at dinner with my editors at the Mail, and I told them this story, and one of my editors goes, "Well, what's the hook?" I said, "What's the hook? Are you kidding me?" Like, what's the hook?
Oh, that sounds great.
And it sort of circles back to what you were talking about, like nature versus nurture, like what in him like allowed for this incredible moral lapse, but then spent his life trying to make up for it.
So do you have everything, and you just need to figure out how to tell the story, or is there more you need to uncover
it's a huge
about
investigation.
All right, so you're investigating. All right. Wow.
Yeah.
60s in New York area?
East Coast. I have 2 states, but I'm pretty sure I know the state.
All right. Oh, good luck. I can't wait to... I'd love to see the proposal when it's ready, too.
Oh, okay. I'll share it. I always love another writer's eye on my stuff, so that would be great.
All right, so on to the lightning round with Maureen Callahan. Your favorite book as a kid?
Okay, I thought about this. My favorite books as an early reader, it wasn't one book, but I was obsessed with biographies, the lives of saints and the lives of first ladies. And I think the connective tissue is female martyrdom. But there were really no higher stakes than being, say, like a teenage girl who's hearing voices and is convinced that, it's God, it's an archangel telling her to go into battle, and it's going to lead to a terribly painful death of mortification. There were no higher stakes than that. And then, as I got into 4th, 5th, 6th grade, it was all Judy Blume. It was Deanie. It was the story of a girl with scoliosis. Like, all girls get scoliosis of some kind, or most do. Or Forever, which was the book that was always passed around Catholic school under the lunch table. Like, don't let the lunch mother see. Like, check page 68, So, yeah, those would be the books.
All right. So the Catholic school, did you have, like, nuns as your teachers? And,
yes.
like, rulers across the back of the hand, that sort of thing?
Oh, my God. I had this one nun,
Truly?
Sister John Michael. Oh, worse, Doug. Sister John Michael in the 3rd grade used to take this poor boy, Mauro DeBari. I'll never forget his name. This poor kid had already been left back. She would bring him up to the front of the class. She had this really thick wooden desk, and she would, I am not exaggerating in the least, take him by his ear and slam his head into the desk repeatedly.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
Curiously, you can't. Go
Even
figure.
then, maybe. I don't know. How do you get did she ever get fired for that?
No,
No
she was
parents
like
complained?
this was just, well, if Sister John Michael did it, she must have had a reason. This was the warped thinking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a way we've come.
Yes.
All right, book or books you're reading now?
So I just started the Lisa Marie Presley Riley Keough memoir. I'm about halfway through it. If I hadn't been so tired, I would have done it in one sitting. I'm interested in it for several reasons. I love a great celebrity memoir. I love Elvis and have read just about everything there is to read. But I
get confused. Lisa Marie was the daughter who dated Michael Jackson for a time?
Yes, Lisa Marie was
Priscilla was
Elvis Presley's only daughter, only child. She was married to Michael Jackson.
They got married? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. At the height of the rumors about him with little boys.
That was a orchestrated marriage to try to...
Well, we all thought so, but in the book, she talks about how she was really in love with him.
Oh, okay.
Wild. It gets wilder. The book's shortcoming so far, as I am feeling, is that, Lisa Marie died an active drug addict. And active addicts can't go deep. So this memoir only goes, you're under the sediment maybe a good 6 inches, maybe.
There's another couple feet to go.
At least.
So you're so busy with your column. You're writing books and proposals for books and things like that. So clearly you're a very active writer and reader. So you're always reading, but it's probably hard to find the time. Are you mostly reading nonfiction or fiction, or are you reading
Both.
research for your books?
Both. And I love fiction, and actually for Ask Not, I don't know if you've read this novel. I don't know how you feel about Jonathan Franzen.
Yeah, I like him.
Did you read Crossroads?
That one I didn't. I read Freedom and God, what was the other? To be honest, I like him, but the sort of the family strife. That's a theme in a lot of his books. Sometimes it kind of stresses me out, so I don't really.
I get it.
Reading. He's a terrific, important writer, and so I read it for how good he is, but I don't always find it a pleasure to read, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I mean, there's a darkness.
Yeah, they're pretty dark.
They're pretty dark. But I read Crossroads while I was writing Ask Not.
Is Crossroads one of his early ones?
No, it's the most recent one.
Oh, okay.
It's about an American family. Well, it's an American.
What was the one before Freedom that was?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. It was the book with the birds. It was a marriage that was maybe coming apart, maybe not. The title escapes me. So the first one was the Corrections.
That's
right.
Yeah.
The Oprah pick that he swiftly said no, thank you.
And then he sort of walked that back, right? He's like, I didn't mean to say
later,
I don't love you and your people.
I think his publishers took him in for a good whipping.
Yeah. If Oprah says she wants your book, great.
You do it.
Yeah.
The money that guy left on the table.
Yeah.
The potential future audience he left on the table.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he's doing okay anyway, but that's true. I mean, that was when Oprah was at her peak, to turn your back on that. My gosh.
I mean, if she anointed you, that was it. Your life was changed. Yeah. But Crossroads was this incredible story set in the 70s. It's an American family. Each chapter is told from the point of view of a different member, and it alternates. And whoever's head you're in, you're always seeing everything through their eyes. They're telling you the truth as they see it. And I was like, oh, that's the structure for this. I just ripped it off. And I loved it. And I think it's Franzen probably at the height of his powers.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah. So I do read fiction as well. I love it.
All right. High praise for Franzen. Okay. This is a show favorite. Your least attended book event ever.
Just the other night. Doug. I was in Point Pleasant, New Jersey.
You're too big a star for that, to be having those
Oh, you're
happen
so
now.
kind. What my kind editors and publicists tell me is that COVID has killed the live book event.
Yeah.
And there really is something to it. I did this event at a bookstore I love, run by a family I love, and I have family ties to them. And about, I want to say 15 people came out. They were all sort of older women. But the great thing was I had these 2 older women who planted themselves right in front of me. They were maybe 7 feet away from me. And I'm maybe 10 minutes in and they start muttering under their breath. Muttering under their I said, what's going on over there, ladies? Oh, nothing. No, come on. You have something to say. Let's say it. We're having a book talk. Let's go. Oh, well, you're just wrong. I mean, they came to play. This was like their most exciting Friday night. I've never had anything like that. I had 2 little hecklers. Were
they challenging you on facts in the book?
Facts on the book. Oh, I said this. Irish Catholic families, speaking from experience, typically have generations of secrets that only, as they slowly reveal themselves, tend to blow one's mind. You're wrong about that. Oh, just speaking from my so-called lived experience, one of my least favorite sayings, but I felt pretty confident in that assertion. She later came up to me and was asking me where my family was from. It was a very strange event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some kooks. I should add to this, like, strangest question you've ever gotten at a book event, because I've gotten some very bizarre. One guy, I said I was from Philadelphia on my book jacket. This was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we got deep in the weeds on exactly which part of Philadelphia. He was challenging me, like, well, I don't think that's really considered Philadelphia if you said you're from there. And I'm like, we're a little off topic here. This is a separate meeting. You and I can have another time. But he had just sort of wandered in off the street, and we went deep on that for like 5 minutes in the middle of a book event.
Yeah, this is where we're at.
Yeah. All right, for the next one, we're going to do lightning round with a bit of a twist.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask you your opinion on the top 4 hypocrites in the world today. And from there, once we've established our final 4, we're gonna debate the world champion hypocrite.
Okay. I took this list when I was thinking about this. I sort of did this with what's happening now in mind, without trying to make it political, because I don't want to really date it, this episode. But number 4.
I've got my pen.
Ready?
Yeah.
Ta-Nehisi Coates currently has a book out about the Israeli-Palestine conflict, which he says openly, before I wrote this book, I had no fucking idea what was going on over there. But I decided to parachute in and figure it out for everybody. And guess what? Israel shouldn't exist. And I know, because I've studied the Jim Crow South. Okay. Then he goes on CBS and is interviewed by Tony DeCopel, who pushes back and says, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about October 7th? Let's talk. And suddenly Tony DeCopel becomes the story, and there is this maelstrom in the media about how dare a white journalist push back against the great Ta-Nehisi Coates. If Ta-Nehisi Coates had the courage of his convictions and was a true provocateur in the mold of, say, a Christopher Hitchens, who I miss very, very much and wish was here, he would have gotten out front and said, hey,
let's debate.
I did an interview with this major network, and I'm putting out some provocative ideas about the probably most controversial geopolitical issue of our time, of modern history. I'm here for it. I'm in the ring. I deserve hard questions. Let's do this. I can take it. I have no business in this industry if I can't. But he didn't, because I think he is a coward, and I think he knows intellectually his shortcomings are many. So that's number 4.
Okay. All right. Number 3. I'm jotting that down. By the way, I think Coleman Hughes has offered to debate him. He's also offered to debate, Ivermex Kendi and some of these folks on some of these issues, but no one takes up Coleman on the debate challenge.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Okay. Number 3.
Number 3, Rachel Maddow. $30 million a year at MSNBC to do 1 episode a week. She recently gave a talk at a Brooklyn symposium, everybody paid to get in which she said of people not voting for Kamala Harris, i.e. Trump voters, I believe in redemption. I believe everyone can change. Who was on air after the Robert Hur report, which adjudged Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory. Therefore, no charges would be forthcoming. Leading the charge with this extensive panel about the gratuitous nature of such an assessment and how everybody could tell Biden is the best Biden. He's on his game. He's super sharp. 6 weeks later, after the debate, they're all weeping into their coffee cups.
Right.
Okay. Can't stand her. Okay. Number 2. This is a bit of an evergreen.
Yeah.
But I had to bump her back for our purposes. Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
We don't even need to go
I
into
felt confident she'd be on the list. I mean, the reasons are plenty.
Yeah, definitely. She apparently, the latest report this morning was that their new Invictus CEO, who I'm sure will last all of 6 days, has been told that he can address her as ma'am. And number one, Doug Emhoff. Dougie Doug out there raising the flag for women's rights and lifting up women. And when women do well, we all do well. And he is being supported by a bulk of the mainstream media who thinks he's just fine as redefining masculinity. And no thank you. He has yet to address truly slapping an ex-girlfriend so hard in public that she spun around.
Yes.
And impregnating the nanny, who later told people, as per reporting, I am not saying, as per reporting, that she believes it was Doug's temper that caused her to lose that baby.
Yeah. Daily Mail leading the reporting on this, by the way, with the Emhoff stuff. So that's a great Final Four. My gosh. I have to add, I'm glad Meghan is on the list. I assume that would be because you've written so many columns that are so magical to read on that topic.
Thank you.
My God, so good. I would give an honorable mention to Joe Scarborough just for a couple reasons, because the Biden thing, of course, he has Biden as his best Biden. He's sharp. We've never seen a better Biden. And then he can flip literally the next morning and say, yeah, it's time. And then, but the coup de grace with Scarborough and Mika, maybe they're a tandem, they can share a spot in the honorable mention, is Trump. Back in 2015, nobody was putting Trump on the air more than those two on Morning Joe. And they'd let Trump call in. They'd let him do it. They were going to Mar-a-Lago and spending the weekend there. They loved Trump. And then I don't know what happened. Trump didn't love them back, or they had a bad encounter or something. But they are the most adamant anti-Trumpers of all time. And for what reason, I don't know. But they just are. They've got to be somewhere in the hypocrite range, because they're flip-flopping on things just for sort of their own show. Is amazing to me.
I couldn't agree with you more. I have to also just add that Mika Brzezinski's presence as a voice in the media, what's the word I would use? Not irritates. It outrages me. She's not bright. Her purpose on Morning Joe is to sigh. She sighs whenever somebody makes a point, but she can't pitch in. She can't agree. She can't disagree. She can't challenge. She can't speak extemporaneously. She can't do anything, but she gets on The View. She goes anywhere and talks about, the threat Trump poses. By the way, as an avid tabloid reader, I remember back when Trump was running the first time, it was the Inquirer that had all the information. Page 6 sort of danced around it about Mika and Joe's extramarital affair. Mm-hmm. They were on the air and everybody could kind of tell, but it was like a secret. They were both married to other people. Trump knew all about that. He kept that a secret for them. Where's the loyalty?
Yeah. Well, I would say with all of this, some of these are political, and I don't care if you love Trump or hate Trump or love Harris or hate Harris or whatever, if you're left or right. In my head, I have a winner of this. Even having said all about that about Joe and Mika, I have a winner who is not those two.
Okay.
In my head, and I'll give you my rationale. These other folks, Coates, Maddow, Emhoff, Scarborough, they're political operatives. They kind of live in the politics world. They, I don't know. In their heads, they have sort of a true north of where they're going. And they've cut some corners, and I think lots of politicians and people in that world do. They've done it in the most egregious terms. And I think they must know they're dishonest in some cases, for Maddow to go out and do the Russia thing over and over and over again, then it's debunked. There's never an accounting for having, never an acknowledgement of, well, I guess I was wrong about that. She just sort of paved over it and kept on going. So real problems there, real hypocrisy there. But nothing can top Meghan Markle. I mean, she doesn't even have like a political ambition that she's trying to protect or preserve. I mean, Maddow genuinely believes that voting this way persuading people to go this way is better for the country. I'm sure she believes that's the right thing for the country. And I think I don't know about Emhoff. I don't really know anything about that guy other than, the slapping around thing that the Daily Mail has reported on. I think everybody else has sort of a view of the world, and they're at least being true to their view of the world, even if they're cheating and being hypocrites all around the place to support that end. Their means are terrible, but their end they believe in. Her only end is her own self-promotion, and then she's just, everything she does is so false, it drives me insane.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. I think she's, the runaway legacy winner. She will be giving for many more years to come. And I think the thing that grates about her, possibly more than her greed, her race baiting, is her essential. There, to me, there's really no there. She's inauthentic. When she speaks, there's nothing to grab onto, and she loves to graft herself onto causes that, her most recent one with Harry was, I don't know if you saw this, but it was the evils of social media and the links to suicidality in young people, in teenagers, and how it's the issue of our time. And I don't believe she cares a single whit about that. I think she's like a heat-seeking missile. Like, what can I hang my hat on? What can I seem to, when she...
And anyone can go under the bus. I mean, her own family members, she has zero forgiveness, zero grace for even her own father, who, of course, did some things that were not great, but
not
seemed
that
to come
terrible.
Not that terrible, and came hat in hand for forgiveness and gets the hand.
He didn't spill any of her state secrets. He got shot by paparazzi, He got duped a little bit. But, But
he's inconvenient now, and so...
He's inconvenient, and I think, I wonder about that, really. It's a... What would I call her? I wouldn't label her this, but I do think there's something extremely cold-blooded, if not sociopathic, in an ability to just cut off family members without a look back, or longtime friends without a look back, without giving them the benefit of the doubt or trying to get inside their head. The level of fame that she ascended to so quickly had to be a mind F for everybody around her, but she gave them no grace. While she expects the rest of us to give her nothing but.
Oh, it's a one-way street with her.
One way.
Unbelievable. Well, look, not all your columns are exactly this, but some of my favorites are. And so this is a fun little window into trying to come up with your hook for a column. I was glad I got to talk through some of this with you.
Oh, that was super fun. I love a good hypocrite.
Oh, it's the best. Your takedowns are priceless. They're just such a joy to read.
Oh, thank you, Doug.
All right. Your favorite recent TV show to recommend to the audience?
Industry.
I don't know that one.
Industry on Max, HBO Max.
All right.
Just wrapped up season 3. I'm going to say season 1, it's a little wonky. Just stick with it. It's set in the world of finance. It's set in London. What I love about it is that it really captures in a genius way what it's like to be in your 20s, in your early 20s. Young, single, everything's possible. Great success is possible. Great failure is possible. Romance with anyone in your sightline is possible. Copious amounts of drug taking and alcohol, yet you turn up to work the next day and you're ready to go. It's got this sort of, it's very much in a world that's extremely specific and that I don't know much about. But it's riveting. And the way they get super confident in their storytelling by season 3, you will watch an episode where like wild things happen. And the following episode, there's a very elliptical reference to what's happened to, say, this character over here. And it allows you to fill in the blanks. It doesn't talk down to its audience. It's, I can't,
great.
I can't speak highly enough about it. And also whoever their music supervisor is a genius. The music is incredible. And Kit Harington's in season 3. Jon Snow,
from Game of Thrones. Yeah, I like that guy.
Yes, acquitting himself is quite a decent actor.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll check it out. I'm glad there are 3 seasons or almost 3 seasons out. I'll check that out. Best thing about NYC as we drink from our I Love New York
as we drink
martini glasses.
nighttime really never comes. The first time I went to London, I was like, I'm sorry, the tube closes when?
Right.
It shuts down when?
They kick you out of the pub at 9 or something.
You shut down? What are you talking about? Also, this is not an original observation, but there is truly nowhere else in the world where you will bump up against people of every race, every socioeconomic class, every religion, everything you are not, every second of the day. And I think there is so much about that is important and life-altering and constantly pushes you to think outside of you, the way that you see the world, the way that you experience the world, and how somebody else maybe on any given day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even bump into Chris Cuomo.
If I'm lucky enough, maybe it'll happen again.
Right,
I don't know. Dare to
contest.
dream. I don't know.
And last question for Maureen, one piece of advice for the audience.
Given that you are a podcast for writers and those who love reading, follow Elmore Leonard's 10 Rules of Writing.
Yeah.
You can look it up. It's open source. One of my all-time favorite writers, someone who will make you laugh out loud and was just a genius at like stripping away bullshit and pretense.
Yes, and a dialogue. He was great. I have a funny story about that, actually.
Yeah?
My first book came out, and I went on Don Imus's show.
Whoa.
And he gave me that book. He had a hard copy of Elmore Leonard's 10 Rules of Writing. And I'm like, will you sign it? So I have a signed by Don Imus copy of Elmore Leonard's
Incredible.
10 Rules of Writing that I keep on my, in the sort of bookshelf behind me. And it's great. It does have really valuable lessons. He was so good at dialogue and as you say, stripping away the nonsense and just getting right into the action and keeping the plot moving and really
and his
talented writer.
greatest characters like Raylan Givens, right? I don't know if you watched Justified, which was the adaptation of the Raylan books.
I haven't seen it.
You'd love it. Raylan is like the Elmore Leonard avatar. He'll be dealing with these loquacious criminals and he'll just strip away their bullshit like that.
Yeah.
And it's really crackling, funny dialogue. I just think he's the best.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maureen, what a pleasure. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Doug.
Great to see
Thank
you.
you for a great chat.